For 3 years, every Friday at 6:30, James Parker had performed a ritual that made Cedar Falls whisper. He would order two complete dinners at Murphy's Family Diner and eat alone, staring at an untouched plate as if waiting for someone who would never come. Tonight felt different. November rain hammered the windows as James entered, shaking water from his work jacket. He walked directly to booth 12, where a small blue backpack with dinosaur patches hung like a shrine to interrupted childhood. Rose Murphy, 62 with silver hair and knowing eyes, approached with her notepad already filled. "Two plates, extra gravy." "Yes, ma'am, just like always." She returned with two steaming dinners, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, one for James, one for the ghost of his 8-year-old son. James ate mechanically, occasionally glancing at the cooling food across from him. Sometimes he could almost see Ethan sitting there, sandy-haired, gap-toothed, chattering about the motorcycle engine they'd been rebuilding. Ethan would have been 11 now, but a drunk driver had stolen that future 3 years ago. The door chimed. Through the glass, two figures huddled against the storm, a woman and small child, both drenched. The woman kept glancing over her shoulder as if expecting pursuit. They entered hesitantly, dark hair plastered to her skull, water pooling at her feet. Behind her, a boy of perhaps 7 clutched a Superman lunchbox like armor. His face was pale with exhaustion. The sight hit James like a blow. Same age as Ethan had been. Same vulnerable posture. Same cautious, intelligent eyes. Rose approached them. "Evening, folks." "Table for two?" The woman's voice trembled. Could we sit for a few minutes? To get warm?" Rose glanced at the shivering child, torn between compassion and business. "This is a restaurant, honey. You'll need to order something." The woman flushed with shame. "I understand. We don't... We can't really..." Her voice cracked. The boy looked up with an expression holding too much adult understanding. He knew they had no money. His small face resigned itself to disappointment with practiced ease. That expression shattered something in James's chest. Without conscious decision, James stood. "They're with me." Rose turned, surprised. In 3 years, James had never deviated from his solitary routine. The woman stared as if he'd offered salvation. "We couldn't impose..." "You're not," James said quietly. He gestured toward booth 12. "Please, sit." The woman guided her son to the booth. The boy sat where Ethan's backpack hung, gazing at the untouched plate with wonder. James pushed the cooling dinner toward the child. "Go ahead, son." The boy looked to his mother, who nodded through tears. With careful, grateful movements, he began eating. Not desperately, but with measured appreciation. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. This is Tommy. James Parker." He watched Tommy eat with quiet concentration. "Where are you folks from?" Sarah hesitated. "Boston originally. We've been traveling." The word carried weight, suggesting something urgent. James recognized the signs of people carrying secrets. As Tommy finished, he looked up gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. This is the best dinner I've had in forever." "You're welcome, Tommy." Tommy smiled, transforming his face. "Do you have kids, Mr. Parker?" The question hung like a held breath. "I had a son. His name was Ethan. He would have liked you." "Where is he now?" "He's gone, buddy. But I think he would have wanted me to share his dinner with you tonight." Tommy considered this seriously. "I bet he was nice, like you." "Yeah," James said softly. "He was." Sarah's phone buzzed against the table, unnaturally loud. She glanced at the screen and went completely white. Her hands began trembling so violently she nearly dropped the device. "Mom!" Tommy's voice carried immediate alarm. Sarah stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. The number was unknown, but somehow she knew exactly who was calling. Only one person could have gotten this number. "Sarah?" James leaned forward, noting her terrified expression. The phone stopped buzzing, then immediately started again. Sarah's terror was so complete that James understood instinctively whoever was calling represented mortal danger. "We have to go," Sarah whispered, grabbing Tommy's hand. "Right now." "Mom, I haven't finished." "Now, Tommy." Her panic made the boy's eyes go wide with fear. James stood as Sarah pulled Tommy from the booth. "Sarah, wait. What's happening?" But they were already moving toward the door, Sarah's movements quick and desperate. Tommy looked back with confusion and growing terror. "Thank you for dinner," Tommy called as his mother dragged him into the storm. James watched them disappear, left with growing certainty that he'd witnessed a woman and child fleeing something terrible. The next morning, James found them sleeping in his workshop parking lot. Through the fogged windows of a battered Honda Civic, he could see two figures huddled under a thin blanket. James tapped gently. Sarah jolted awake, immediately defensive. Seeing James, relief flooded her features. "I'm sorry. We didn't have anywhere." "Come inside, both of you." Tommy stirred, blinking sleepily. Seeing James, he smiled despite their circumstances. "Mr. Parker, are we at your work?" James led them into Parker's Motors, noting how Sarah constantly checked windows. She was watching for someone who scared her badly enough to sleep in a car with her son. "Coffee," James offered. "Please," Sarah said gratefully. Tommy explored with wide-eyed fascination. The workshop was organized chaos. Motorcycle parts, tools, half-assembled engines. "This is so cool," Tommy exclaimed, examining a Harley. "Do you fix all different motorcycles?" "Pretty much," James replied, warming to the boy's enthusiasm. "That's a 1987 Sportster." Tommy nodded seriously. "Could you teach me about engines sometime?" The question stirred memories of similar conversations with Ethan. "Maybe, if your mom says okay." Sarah watched this exchange with growing concern. Tommy was getting attached, and that terrified her. Every time Tommy felt safe somewhere, Derek found them. "Actually," she said quietly, "I don't suppose you know anyone hiring. I have healthcare experience." James studied her carefully. "What kind of healthcare?" Sarah hesitated. "I was a registered nurse. Emergency department at Mass General." "Was?" The question hung between them. Finally, Sarah spoke barely above a whisper. "I had to leave. Professional complications that made it impossible to stay." Tommy looked up from the motorcycle with an expression too mature for his years. "Mom had to stop being a nurse because Daddy made her do bad things at the hospital. That's why we're running from Daddy." Sarah's face went pale. "Tommy, you know we don't talk about—" "But it's true, Mom. Daddy hurt people and made you help. And when you said no, he got mad and said he was going to take me away forever." James felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Your father—" "What's his name, Tommy?" Sarah shot him a warning look. But Tommy answered innocently, "Derek Mitchell. He's not nice like you, Mr. Parker. He scares me." Derek Mitchell. The name meant nothing to James yet, but it would soon become the thread connecting his past tragedy to his present choice. "Sarah," he said quietly, "you and Tommy are staying here, in the apartment upstairs, as long as you need to. We can't—" "Yes, you can, and you will." As Sarah began crying with relief, Tommy continued examining the Harley, already making himself at home in the workshop, where he would learn about engines, loyalty, and what it meant to have a father figure who would never let anyone hurt him. 5 days passed before James understood that Sarah and Tommy weren't just homeless. They were fugitives. Sarah insisted on earning her keep, organizing James's workshop with systematic efficiency. Tommy had claimed a corner for homework while James worked, the boys' questions about engines filling the space with lively chatter. But inconsistencies nagged at James. Sarah moved with precise medical competence, automatically checking Tommy for injuries, cleaning James's cut hand with professional skill. Her healthcare knowledge went far beyond maternal concern. The revelation came when Tommy developed a fever. Sarah's transformation was immediate. She checked his temperature, monitored breathing, assessed symptoms with clinical detachment while maintaining gentle maternal comfort. Temperature is 101.8, she announced with professional authority. We need to monitor for dehydration and potential complications. James watched, noting the medical terminology, practice movements. You really are a nurse. Sarah's hand stilled. Was. I was a nurse. What happened? Tommy dozed while Sarah wrestled with how much truth she could reveal. I worked emergency at Mass General, but I started noticing patterns that didn't make sense. Patients with specific injuries, same insurance, same referring physician, same stories about accidents that didn't match medical evidence. Always pressure from administration to treat quickly without standard documentation. James felt understanding dawn with dread. Someone was using the hospital to treat criminals. My ex-husband Derek was the referring physician, bringing organized crime members for off-the-books treatment. Gunshot wounds, stab injuries, all documented as accidents to protect them from law enforcement. And they wanted you to participate. Derek said it was helping people who couldn't afford health care. But when I questioned inconsistencies, threats began. Derek said accidents could happen to anyone, even children. Tommy's safety depended on my cooperation. You reported him. I tried. Filed complaints, contacted authorities, provided documentation. I thought doing right would protect us. Sarah's laugh was bitter. Derek had connections. My complaints were dismissed as vindictive lies. The investigation was dropped. Suddenly, I was facing charges for falsifying records and patient endangerment. The systematic cruelty staggered James. They made you the criminal. Completely. Derek filed for custody, claiming I was mentally unfit. Had witnesses prepared to testify I'd been erratic, dangerous to Tommy. So you ran, Sarah nodded, tears flowing. The night before the custody hearing, Derek made his final offer. Cooperate or Tommy would disappear into foster care while I rotted in prison. How long have you been running? 8 months, 13 moves, shelters, motels, sometimes the car. Tommy's missed most of second grade. I know this isn't the childhood he deserves, but I don't know how to give him better without getting him killed. James processed the magnitude of Sarah's sacrifice. Then he asked the question that would change everything. Sarah, what does Derek look like? She described him. 6 feet tall, dark hair, scar through left eyebrow, about 38. The description could match someone James knew, though the possibility seemed impossible. Derek's full name? Derek James Mitchell. Why? James walked to his office, retrieving a folder untouched for 3 years. Police reports from Ethan's wrongful death case. There, in black and white, Derek James Mitchell, age 35 at arrest, vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated, sentenced 18 months, served 11. The drunk driver who killed Ethan was Sarah's ex-husband. James stared at the report until words became meaningless symbols. The cosmic cruelty was breathtaking. He had opened his heart to the family of the man who destroyed his world. Every moment of happiness Tommy brought him felt like betrayal of Ethan's memory. James? Sarah's voice seemed distant. What's wrong? He couldn't answer. Couldn't explain that his kindness was built on his son's grave. Yet looking at Tommy sleeping peacefully, trusting that adults would keep him safe, James realized something profound. The boy was innocent as Ethan had been. Tommy hadn't chosen his father. Every instinct screamed to send them away. Justice demanded it, but mercy demanded something else. James, you're scaring me. What's in that folder? James closed the file and looked at Sarah, really looked at her. He saw a woman who had sacrificed everything to protect an innocent child from a monster. Someone who had chosen right over safe. "Your ex-husband killed my son." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "What?" "3 years ago. Drunk driving. Hit and run. Ethan was 8. Sarah covered her mouth with trembling hands. "Oh God, James, I'm so sorry. If I had known." "You couldn't have known. This isn't your fault." "But it is," Sarah whispered. "I brought the man who killed your son to your door. I put you in danger. I let Tommy get attached when Derek's going to destroy it all." Tommy stirred, mumbling in sleep. Both adults looked at him with fierce protectiveness. "Sarah, what do you want me to do? Send you away? Let Derek take Tommy?" Sarah looked at him through tears, seeing something in his expression she couldn't interpret. "What do you want?" James thought about Ethan, about the values he tried to instill. Courage, compassion, standing up for those who couldn't protect themselves, understanding that children weren't responsible for their parents' sins. "I want to make sure Derek Mitchell never hurts another child, starting with his own." The phone rang at 11:30 p.m., shrill in the quiet workshop. Sarah went rigid. "He doesn't call. Derek never calls ahead." James picked up on the third ring. "Parker's Motors." The voice was smooth, confident, with casual menace that made James's skin crawl. "You must be the mechanic my wife's been hiding behind. I'm Derek Mitchell, and I'm calling to give you one chance to do this easy." Sarah could hear clearly enough to send her into panic. She grabbed Tommy as the boy's eyes went wide with terror. "They're not your family anymore," James said, steadier than he felt. Derek's laughter was cold. "Funny thing about family, mechanic. Blood is blood, law's law, and I have legal custody. But I'm curious. What has Sarah told you? I bet she's painted quite the victim story." "She's told me enough. Has she mentioned she's a thief? That she stole from my accounts? The falsified records? Patient endangerment charges? My poor, unstable ex-wife dragging my traumatized son across country, filling his head with lies." James looked at Tommy, who was shaking his head frantically, tears streaming. "She told me about your medical fraud operation. How you threatened her and Tommy when she wouldn't cooperate." Telling silence. "I don't know what you're talking about," Derek said, confidence wavering. "3 years ago, you killed an 8-year-old boy named Ethan Parker in a drunk driving accident." Another pause. "That was a tragic accident for which I paid my debt. What does ancient history have to do with collecting my son?" "Ethan Parker was my son." The silence stretched endlessly. When Derek spoke again, his voice carried genuine amusement. "Well, isn't that fascinating? The universe has quite a sense of irony. You're protecting the family of the man who killed your boy. How does that feel?" James closed his eyes. "It feels like preventing you from destroying another family." "Really? Are you helping my family from nobility, or are you so desperate to replace what I took that you'll steal mine? Using my son to fill the hole your son left?" The accusation hit its target, voicing James's deepest fears, but it revealed Derek's character, his instinct to find weakness and exploit it. "I'll be there in 2 hours. Have my family ready." The line went dead. Derek Mitchell arrived in Cedar Falls at 1:47 a.m. with 2 associates who specialized in making problems disappear. He expected to find a sleepy town unprepared for his kind of pressure. Instead, Main Street was lined with pickup trucks, sheriff's vehicles, and more awake citizens than any town should have at 2 a.m. "This doesn't look right," muttered Vincent, Derek's enforcer, noting the unusual activity. Derek's confidence wavered as he parked across from Parker's Motors. Through windows, he could see multiple figures, far more than just the mechanic and his family. Derek and his associates approached, noting Sheriff Martinez's patrol car and an unusual number of locals visible nearby. As they reached the door, it opened before Derek could knock. Sheriff Martinez stepped out, hand on his weapon. Behind him, Derek could see James Parker, Sarah, Tommy, and a crowd of Cedar Falls residents. "Derek Mitchell?" Sheriff Martinez asked. "That's right. I'm here to collect my wife and son. I have legal custody. Documents issued through fraudulent proceedings under federal investigation," interrupted a new voice. FBI agent Patricia Santos emerged from the workshop, badge displayed. Behind her came two additional federal agents. Derek's confidence cracked. "I don't know what you're talking about. Medical fraud, money laundering, intimidation of federal witnesses." Agent Santos stepped closer. "We've been investigating your operation 14 months. Your ex-wife's testimony was exactly what we needed." "Sarah's testimony?" Derek's voice sharpened with rage. "She's a disgraced nurse facing charges herself." "Actually," Agent Santos said with satisfaction, "all charges against Mrs. Mitchell have been dropped. She's been cleared and granted federal witness protection. Her license has been restored." Derek felt his world tilting. For 8 months, he'd hunted Sarah as a fugitive criminal. Learning she was now a protected federal witness changed everything. "This is absurd," Derek said, voice lacking earlier authority. "I'm Tommy's father. I have custody rights." "Rights based on perjured testimony and falsified evidence," Agent Santos replied. "The Massachusetts custody order has been vacated pending investigation." Derek looked around at the faces surrounding him. Law enforcement, federal agents, half the population of Cedar Falls. For the first time in years, Derek couldn't manipulate his way out. James Parker stepped forward. "Hello, Derek," James said quietly, voice carrying controlled fury. Derek studied the mechanic, noting barely restrained anger, protective positioning between Derek and Tommy. "You're the grieving father," Derek said with deliberate cruelty. "How does it feel playing daddy to my son? Does it fill the hole I left in your pathetic life?" Shock rippled through the crowd. Most knew about Ethan's death, but few understood the connection. James fought for control. "It feels like preventing you from destroying another family the way you destroyed mine." "I didn't destroy your family," Derek snapped. "I had an accident. Tragic accident I paid for. Your son's death was unfortunate, but 3 years ago. Time to move on." "You were driving drunk," James said, deadly quiet. "Ran a red light at 50 in a school zone. Left my 8-year-old son dying while you drove to establish an alibi." Derek shrugged with studied indifference. "Like I said, paid my debt. Ancient history. Not to me, and not to Tommy." Tommy, silent throughout the confrontation, stepped forward despite Sarah's protective grip. His small voice carried clearly. "You're not my daddy," he said with surprising firmness. Derek's attention snapped to his son, expression turning dangerous. "What did you say?" "I said you're not my daddy anymore," Tommy repeated, voice growing stronger. "Daddies protect their kids. You hurt Mom, hurt me, and killed Mr. James's little boy. Real dads don't do those things." Derek's face contorted with rage. "You little—" He lunged toward Tommy with raised hand. He never completed the motion. James intercepted Derek with surprising speed, driving him backward. Derek stumbled, his associates moving to intervene. "Federal agents!" Agent Santos barked, weapon drawn. "Nobody moves!" Sheriff Martinez and deputies had weapons out, creating a perimeter trapping Derek's associates. "This is over, Derek," Agent Santos said with quiet authority. "You're under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy charges." Minutes passed in controlled chaos as federal agents arrested Derek and his associates. Derek's fury gave way to desperation as his empire collapsed. "This won't stick," he snarled as Agent Santos cuffed him. "I have connections. Lawyers." "Had," Agent Santos corrected. "Past tense. Your network is being rolled up as we speak." As Derek was led toward federal vehicles, he turned back with eyes full of hatred. Enjoy playing house, he spat. But remember, every time you look at my son, you'll think about what I took from you. James met Derek's gaze steadily. You're wrong. Every time I look at Tommy, I'll remember what I was able to save. I'll remember that some children get protected from their father's sins. Derek was still shouting as agents drove him into the November darkness. The crowd began to disperse. Sheriff Martinez coordinated with FBI about follow-up. Rose Murphy pressed coffee into everyone's hands before heading back to her diner. Finally, only James, Sarah, and Tommy remained in the workshop. Sarah sat heavily, legs finally giving out. It's really over. Derek is in federal custody. Tommy ran to James, wrapping arms around his waist with fierce gratitude. Mr. James, we can really stay in Cedar Falls? James looked down at the boy. Derek's son, Ethan's contemporary. The bridge between past grief and future hope. Do you want to stay, Tommy? Yes, Tommy said immediately. I want to stay with you and Mom. I want to keep learning about motorcycles. I want to finish second grade and maybe make friends. James looked at Sarah, who was watching with eyes holding hope, exhaustion, and something deeper, recognition of a man who had chosen love over vengeance. Sarah? Sarah thought about 8 months of running, constant fear, exhaustion of never belonging. She thought about Derek's final words, his attempt to poison the connection between James and Tommy. She thought about the courage it had taken for James to protect her son, despite knowing who Derek was. I want to stay, she said firmly, not because we need rescuing, but because this feels like home, because Tommy deserves to grow up somewhere he's wanted and protected. 6 months later, on a warm spring evening, James sat on the front porch of the house he'd bought with Sarah. A modest colonial with yard for Tommy to play in and detached garage for his motorcycle business. The boy was inside working on a science project, occasionally calling questions about gears and leverage. Sarah emerged carrying iced tea, settling beside James on the porch swing they'd installed. They could hear Tommy's laughter as he tested a pulley system in his bedroom. They weren't married yet. That conversation lived in their careful future, but they were something more substantial than convenience and deeper than friendship. Two people who had learned that families could be built by choice as much as blood, that healing happened not by forgetting the past, but by refusing to let it define the future. Every Friday evening, they went to Murphy's family diner. The booth they shared had 2 small backpacks, Ethan's faded blue one with dinosaur patches, and Tommy's bright red one with motorcycle logos. Rose brought 4 plates, 4 glasses of chocolate milk, 4 pieces of apple pie. They ate together, talking about their week, making plans, building memories that would anchor Tommy's childhood in love rather than fear. Ethan's place wasn't empty anymore, but it wasn't replaced either. It was honored by understanding that some people live on not as ghosts to be carried, but as inspiration for the love their memory makes possible. James never stopped missing his son, but he stopped feeling guilty about finding joy. Sarah never forgot the price of standing up for what was right, but she stopped believing she had to face the world alone. Tommy never forgot the terror of being hunted, but he stopped looking over his shoulder. Derek Mitchell was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. His network was dismantled, assets seized, corruption exposed. He became a case study about long-term consequences of organized crime disguised as legitimate business. But in Cedar Falls, Derek's true legacy was different. His son grew up surrounded by love, protection, and understanding that children weren't responsible for their father's sins. Tommy excelled in school, developed engineering talent, and maintained fascination with motorcycles that honored both his mechanical aptitude and memory of the boy who had shared his adoptive father's passion. James never told Tommy the complete truth about Derek and Ethan. Some truths were too complex for childhood, but he raised Tommy with values Ethan would have admired: courage, compassion, willingness to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Late at night, when Tommy was asleep and Sarah was reading beside him, James would look at Ethan's framed photograph and feel something transcending grief. Not replacement or forgetting, but profound satisfaction of a promise kept. He had protected a father's son from becoming his father. He had broken a cycle of violence and given Tommy the chance to become the kind of man Ethan would have grown up to be. The second plate had begun as a monument to loss. It had become a celebration of love that survives even the worst of what people do to each other. Some debts can only be paid forward. Some justice comes not from punishment, but from prevention. Some families are built not from blood, but from courage to choose love over vengeance, hope over hatred, future over past. In a small diner in Cedar Falls, 4 plates of comfort food served as daily testimony to a simple truth. Healing doesn't happen when you forget what you've lost. It happens when you choose to save what you still can. Tommy grew up knowing he was loved not because of who his father was, but despite it. He learned that real strength came from protecting others, that real courage meant standing up to bullies even when they shared your DNA. On his 18th birthday, Tommy opened an acceptance letter to MIT's engineering program. That evening, at Murphy's family diner, James watched the young man he'd raised tackle 4 plates of meatloaf while excitedly explaining plans to design safer vehicle systems. Ethan would have been proud of his brother. Some stories end with justice, others end with mercy, the best ones end with both, wrapped in understanding that love is always a choice, and the best choice is always love. In Booth 12 at Murphy's Family Diner, that choice was made new every Friday evening, one shared meal at a time. The second plate had found its purpose at last. Sometimes a second plate isn't about remembering what was taken from you. Sometimes it's about celebrating what you chose to save,